We're glad you're with us today. It's 5:52. We're going to send things out to Spirit Knob Winery, where we're going to catch up with Lindsay Boach to see what we can expect this morning on Tri-Cities This Morning. What's going on over there?
Yeah, good morning, guys. We've had a little trouble, but now we're ready to go. We've been making some wine. They've been crushing the grapes. They have 4 of these bins, and I think they're about 1,000 pounds each because we have 4 tons here, or 2 tons rather, and 4 bins. They go into this machine. We'll show you that a little bit later, but this is what the end product of 2 of the bins looks like. So this is the crushing process. We'll get into a little bit more detail about that coming up in a few minutes.
Great, we're excited. Thank you, Lindsay. Glad to have you with us.
Well, we're going to take a check back over at Spirit Knob Winery.
We are. Lindsay is out there this morning. Hopefully she's not tasting any of the wine. She is just learning how to make it. Right, Lindsay?
Yes, guys, and actually up here in Ursa, it just started to sprinkle just a little bit. Here's what we're working with. This is another one of those bins like I was talking to you about. Here are the grapes that are in the bin. They go in this machine. It destems them and crushes them, yeah, and takes out the stems, and then it goes into this bin. I'm going to have Lily, can you turn down the audio just a little? This is kind of loud, so turn it down a little because I want to show you what this actually does.
Is it going straight from the end to the 2 bins into the vat, correct?
Yeah, it goes from the bin to the machine, and then it goes through the pipe and into here, and he's kind of pushing down with a paddle type of a thing so that it doesn't, so that it kind of smushes them just a little bit more.
So this is why you're not jumping on the grapes this morning, Lindsay.
I bet a lot of people who buy their wine from here are glad I'm not.
I bet they are too.
This is only step 1, and these grapes actually came from Pike County, so they're local grapes as well. The next step is going to be to press them, and we'll do that here in about 10 minutes.
Wonderful. We're looking forward to that. Thank you, Lindsay. Wine this morning. It's kind of early, I know, but we're singing about it, and we're learning about wine this morning too with Lindsay.
Yes, we're out at Spirit Knob Winery learning how wine is made, and I thought it was really interesting. They showed us in the earlier half hour how to get the grapes all together, and now you're going to crush grapes?
We've already crushed them. I think we're getting ready to press.
Yeah. Oh, press.
Lindsay?
Okay,
Yeah,
there's a difference.
Right, Hannah.
There's a difference between crushing and pressing.
We're learning a lot.
Yep, and actually we're not making red wine today, we're making white wine. Yeah, we've already crushed them, and now we are pressing them, and right now I'm joined by one of the owners, Matt Schulte. What are they doing here?
Oh, right now we've already crushed and destemmed. We're moving the pumice into the presses. We're adding some rice hulls, keeps our screens open, and also helps get a lot of juice out. So as soon as the presses are full, then we'll close them up, and it runs off of water pressure, and then we'll start pressing off the juice.
And what kind of grapes are these again?
This is a Vidal Blanc.
And it'll make, obviously, a white wine.
It'll make a white wine. We'll make a nice dry white out of it. We'll also use it as a blender into some of our sweeter wines.
So there's not a specific grape for a specific type of wine. This type of grape can be used in multiple wines.
Well, it can be used for different types of wine, but if I do a straight varietal and I call it Vidal Blanc, then legally BATF regulations require that it has to be at least 75% grapes of Vidal Blanc to put that on the label on the bottle.
Okay, and this is called a free run, correct?
Right, the juice that's running off right now is free run, and that's your higher quality juice. We'll separate that juice when we start to press. We'll separate the free run juice from the pressed juice. You get a little more harsh phenolics out of your pressed juice, so your higher quality dry white, if we're going to call it Vidal Blanc, it will then be your free run juice is what we use.
And looking at it, that doesn't look like wine, so there's obviously more steps to go, right?
Hey, take a glass and dip in. I guarantee you it tastes good. It might not look that good, but it definitely tastes good. These guys here are always trying to sneak a drink when I'm not watching. So, but anyway, no, this will end up moving. We'll pump into tank. We'll check our pH and acid levels of it. We'll move it into the cooler, and then we'll get it to settle out. It'll be somewhat clear. When we settle it out, we'll bring that off and then inoculate our cultured yeast and start our fermentation on that clear juice.
This might be a silly question, but where does the alcohol come in?
That's a good question. Alcohol comes from your sugar. So depending on, we pick the grapes based on pH, acid, and sugar levels. The pH and acid are more important to me. If those are balanced out right, the sugar levels will be there that I want. We might get about 20. These are probably about 22 brick or 22%, and that will constitute to about 10% alcohol.
And how many bottles of wine will these 2 tons of grapes make?
Now you're going to ask me to do math. Basically, you're going to get out of a ton, you're going to get about 150 gallon, and you're going to get about 5 bottles to the gallon approximately.
Okay, and now what are they doing here?
Right now they're closing up the presses, and we'll get ready. Once they get them closed up, we'll turn on the water pressure, and they'll start pressing, and then more juice will start to flow.
All right, and there are more steps obviously to come, and we're going to look at those here in a little bit. We're going to do some pH testing with Matt, so that'll be kind of cool too. Learning how to make different types of wine, white wine today.
Lindsay, I have a
here at
question.
Spirit Knob Winery.
If you can, so if you can ask him, the alcohol content of the drier grapes then, or the dry wine, is that less than the sweet wine? If the pH and the sugar content or what kind of determines the alcoholic content? Or no?
I will ask. The different types of sweet wine and dry wine, is there a difference in alcohol content as far as percentages?
Well, it just depends. Not necessarily. A dry wine and a sweet wine can be the same alcohol level. It's just the difference is simply the residual sugar that's left in the wine.
Okay. Does that answer it?
That answers it for me. Thank
And
you.
I got another question for you. They poured the grapes into these big barrels, and then they sprinkled some tan stuff on top. What was all that?
They want to know what he was sprinkling in with the grapes.
Okay, what we were sprinkling in were rice hulls. The rice hulls, they do nothing to the juice at all, but what they do is they do allow it kind of wicks the juice as we're pressing. We'll get more juice out of the pumice. They also help when we go to clean the presses out. It helps clean the pumice stays more dry, and it's a lot easier to get it out of the presses.
Okay, very interesting stuff going on here.
We are talking to an expert this morning. This is great.
Yeah, yes, we are.
We're going to head on out now to Spirit Knob Winery, where we find Lindsay Boach learning to make wine this morning. What's going on over there, Lindsay?
Yep, good morning. We're in the next step of our winemaking process, and we're doing some testing here. There's a hydrometer in the juice right now that's testing the bricks, I believe.
Yep, we're checking the bricks right now, basically the sugar level of the juice. And looks like we're right about 20% alcohol, or 20% sugar. That'll end up constituting to about 10% alcohol. As the yeast consumes the sugar, that's where the alcohol comes from. So we're checking that right now. Here shortly we'll start checking our pH and acid levels, and we'll be going from there.
And now there's a tube here that comes to the pump, which goes to this big thing, and it's already starting to run off into there as well. And so we're going to test the pH level here coming up in a little bit.
Wonderful. I'm looking forward to that. Lindsay's a long way from Rome.
She's having a good time in Ursa this morning. She's out at making wine. So far, she has crushed the grapes and she's pressed the grapes. What's next, Lindsay?
Good morning, guys. Yes, we're in the basement of Spirit Knob Winery doing a little testing right now. It looks like we're doing a science experiment. I haven't seen beakers or graduated cylinders or anything like this since I was in chemistry class, but I guess chemistry is part of the winemaking process. So this is our pH test, correct?
Yeah, this is a pH test right here. We're about we want to be in a range of say 3.2 to 3.4, and right now we're about 3.26 on our pH. That's a good pH for us. Now what we'll do, now that I know my pH, we'll move over and we'll do a total acid test so that I know what my acid level is in the wine.
And now pH does test some sort of acidity, correct?
Yes, it does. It does check the acidity. pH and acid are directly correlated together.
Okay, and next test is?
Well, we're going to do an SO2 test here, and I'm trying to see if I've got power.
And what is this test?
The SO2 test is the sodium metabisulfite. When we bottle, we put about 40 parts per million in the wine. This is to protect the wine. Actually, as we were putting SO2 in at the crusher destemmer, you saw me stirring up the tank. What I'm doing there is the SO2 levels that I'm putting in there will prevent any wild yeast from growing. There's a lot of wild yeast, so thousands of years ago, that's how they made wine. They used the wild yeast that's already on the fruit. So, but I don't want that yeast to kick off. I want to use my cultured yeast, and it's more designed to handle a certain amount of SO2. It's kind of like breeding horses. But anyway, so the SO2 helps prevent bacterial growth and that in the juice, but yet the yeast that I use, it can withstand a certain amount of SO2, not a lot, but a certain amount because it's designed to do that.
Okay, and the next test is?
Well, we're going to try to do a TA test here.
Okay. You want to switch spots with me?
Yep, and I need to get a rinse.
All right, all of this is, I never knew that there was all of this involved in winemaking. I didn't really know. I thought you crush the grapes, you throw something in there, you put it in a jar and let it, not a jar, in new friend here, put it in some sort of a bin or something and let it sit for a little bit and ferment. But apparently there's a lot more to do than just what I originally thought. And
we always use distilled water to clean our probe, our pH probe.
And what's in that beaker there?
That right now just distilled water, and then I'm going to put about 5 mils of juice in there. And we got a little stir bar in there. We're on a stir plate here, and it's a titrating system where we use sodium hydroxide to basically titrate the juice. And basically we get a color change, and then after we get that color change, then we use a multiplier, and it basically tells us, we know how many mils of sodium hydroxide we used, and then there's a multiplier that then tells us what the actual total acidity of the juice is.
All right.
And we have no power.
And the stir bar is that white thing in there?
Yes.
Okay, so hypothetically, this would all turn, it would turn a different color?
Yes, in there. Once I put it in here, we'll titrate right here.
And now, what's in these bins here?
Okay, these tanks here, these are basically have already fermented. This is a red wine, Chamberson. This big tank behind us here is full. That's a red. Actually, the SO2 test that I'm going to take is of that. We've already fermented out. And actually on my reds, now what we're doing is inoculating with our ML, as you can see on my note here. ML is a malolactic culture. It's a bacterial growth that we add to the wine. This is going to be for a high quality dry red. What we're going to do is we're going to convert malic acid to lactic acid. Malic's a harsh acid, a predominant acid in grapes, but lactic acid's a softer acid. So when we do this culture, it's a real subtle fermentation after the main fermentation, and we're going to convert these acids to make it more softer mouthfeel on the red wine.
And now I'm sure a lot of people out there are wondering, from the grape to the bottle, how long does that usually take?
Well, on white wines, that's going to be usually about a year. Even red wines will bottle in a year, but we like to kind of hold those for a couple of years. White wines are known for their very fruity, floral nose, and we do a cool fermentation on those to acquire that. But that doesn't last long on a white wine. White wines are designed to drink within a year to 2 years. They're not designed to age a real long time. Doesn't mean they're going to be bad in 5 years. They're just not going to have that fruity, floral nose that you like when you open that bottle and pour it in the glass, and man, you smell peaches and apricot. Now, that might not be the juice. The wine might be Chardonnay grape, but that grape has notes of pineapple and citrus, and we acquire that by doing a cool fermentation, slowing it down. We don't want too much heat. We don't want to cook those florals off in the air. We want to trap them so that when you open the bottle and you drink it, you're smelling it, and it's not like cooking it off in the air like Grandma does when she's cooking stew in the kitchen.
And now if somebody wants to come by, are you guys still open for the season?
Oh, definitely. We're open year-round, 1 to 5, Saturday, Sunday. Lots of live music, lots of fun, lots of parties up here during Oktoberfest. I think we broke a record last weekend, huge crowd. I think we need a lot bigger parking lot, but hey, we're having fun.
But that's in the works. We'll talk about that later. Thank you very much. Yeah, we've learned a lot about wine today, and if you've missed any of it, it will be available on our YouTube site coming up later on this afternoon.
It's
I
very
can't
cool.
lie, I'm kind of envious of Lindsay this morning. Two of my favorite things, wine and science, so she's a lucky gal.
Well, and it's amazing how much chemistry it takes to make wine, and all to think that Spirit Knob started as a hobby in his basement. It's just amazing.
It's amazing. It's a good story about a business locally, definitely.